Hello everyone, and welcome back to Revit Snippets. Great tips you can learn in just a few minutes. Today, let's do some conceptual modeling. I will show you quickly how to create in your Revit file this kind of facade system. It includes metal panels. Some are open, some are closed. The closed panels that are mainly on the top floors and the bottom section of the facade. Wherever else you have open panels so that when you look from outside, the content of the building is visible. If you want to create something like this for your project, this is the video for you. I have made in here a copy of it in Revit 3D. As you can see there, that's the perspective view. And here I have the same system I can see from any angle. And as promised, you have here in the middle section of the facade, open panels. And then at the bottom and on top, you have these gray panels that are closed, just like the design we saw in the photo. To see it clearer, I can also have maybe a quick section box and then bring it this way. As you can see there, closed panels combined with open panels make this facade really dynamic. Also, all the facade panels are parametric. If I now select this one here and then go to type properties, I can change things like the material for the frame, the same for the panels, or some basic dimensions of this triangular panel. For example, if I want to increase this overhang amount, at the moment it's 200, I can now bring it maybe to 350, just to apply some more shading to the building. Also, because this is a parametric curtain system, you can of course change the grid spacing to make these panels either smaller or bigger. Here we go. You can see there with the bigger overhang, it's looking a lot more like a porcupine. Let's see now step by step how to recreate this in Revit. By the way, if you are new to this channel, make sure to subscribe now, because we do tutorials like this every single week. Okay, let's begin. I have here this one built in Revit 2022, but of course I know it's a new version, at least for now. So, for this demo, let's go to Revit 2019. And we can firstly go to here, choose New, Conceptual Mass. From here, go to Conceptual Mass and select this only template you have there. If you don't have those family templates, simply go to this video description and I will link you to another video on how to get them. For now, let's start creating the form of our facade. We can try to make it as close as possible to this one, but for demo purposes, let's just do something similar. It doesn't have to be 100% exact. So I'm going to start with model line and draw splines through points. Let's just give it a basic shape like this. Okay, you can have more points if you like to give more control to the line, but for now I think this is okay. Next step, we can now select it like that and do create form. When I click on this top line there, I can of course make it higher or lower. For now the default height is fine, so let's keep it as this. I can now go to select the whole surface there, go to X-ray to activate this mode, and then use this button here to add new profiles to the form. Let's do one here in the middle, another one there, another one below this, and then two more right here and right there. The more lines you have as profiles, the more control you're gonna get on the form, but that will also take more time if you want to change it in a fundamental way. So try to strike a balance there. Moving on, I can see this is just a straight, flat, boring facade. What we want to have here is to have some curvature on top and at the bottom. So this seems to be protruding out of the building behind it. Let's do it now. I can now select this top line and the last line below. I can now change to the top view and use the scale tool to make it smaller. As I can see, however, when I select this line, this scale command is not available, and that means I need to turn them first into reference lines. Let's now select this form again and click on dissolve. This command simply undo the form or the surface to extract its components, in this case our profiles there. When I now click on this line there, go to top view, I can see now it's now scalable for me. Let's not forget to get this line at the bottom as well, and then go to top view, and then use this scale button here to scale them around this center point we have from before. Click once, and then make them smaller like this. I can now select those lines and do create form again. As you can see, we have now some curvature. That's good. However, there seems to be kind of a bumpy effect there, and that's not what I want, so let's undo this for a second. Next step, we can select this second line, and this other one second from the bottom. We go to the top view again, and redo the scale command. This time, I'm going to scale these two by just a smaller amount than I used on the previous two lines. So maybe to somewhere there, in the middle. Like this. Get those lines, create form again, and see if that's better. It is, because I have here a smaller curvature, so this middle segment is not so bumpy. Anyway, I can still see that it's going a bit inside, right in the middle there of the surface, so we can fix that now. Let's undo one more time. And then guess this middle line. This time I have to bring it forward, so do scale again. This time I'm going to go outwards to make it bigger, like this. Just by a little bit. And now you know what to do. We can now select those lines one more time and do create form. Now that's a much better and much more regular curvature along the facade. You can make it taper a bit more inside on the top and at the bottom. For now, this is okay for me, so let's move on to the next step. To know what to do next, we need to return to this reference image. As you can see, we have here the top and the bottom segments with closed panels. The best way and easiest way to do this in Revit is actually to have the top section and the bottom section of this surface here as a separate second surface. So when I later on apply the surface division command, I can say for the top and bottom sections, use the closed panels, and then for the rest of the form, use the open panel. So let's make it happen. Let's separate this surface into a second one with just the top and the bottom sections. To do so, I need to have some guidelines. So as a basic kind of test, let's just divide the surface anyway, so we can know where to cut it later on. After selecting it like this, we can go to divide surface there, and then change to use the triangle checkerboard flat pattern. The dimension is of course a bit crazy now. Let's make it more realistic. I can say that for the U grid, we can do fixed distance of 500. And then for the V grid now, maybe something smaller like 300 will do. There we go. Next step, I want to make sure that the justification point of the surface is where I want it to be. At the moment, if I click on this button there, I can see panels are laid out from this center point, and usually that's not very useful. Let's bring it here to this bottom left corner of the facade. That's going to regenerate the surface, and I can see now it has worked, because in the properties I have the U grid justification point at the beginning, and the same for V grid. Next step, I don't want to have partial panels. You know, those along the seam or along the boundary of a surface. This one there, instead of a whole panel, I don't want this. So let's change this now to empty instead of partial. It's going to regenerate the surface one more time. And now we have it as we want it. So let's now go to the south elevation. And let's say we want to have from here up solid panels, and also from here down solid panels as well. That means I have to create an opening between those two planes. Let's now go to create model line, do a rectangle on the reference plane. The reference plane for this view here, because I'm in the south elevation now, that has been set automatically for me to center front back. That's what we want to use. Now let's go ahead and just draw a rectangle like this. If you can see it in 3D, that's what it looks like. Much easier though to manipulate in the elevation. So let's go back here. Next step, I gotta go to Align and say that from this panel up, I should have solid panels. To make it happen, let's align this line to there. So click again, and now it's there. Similarly, I want to have from this line going down solid panels. So there we have the second alignment. Looking good and ready to go. I'm gonna go back to 3D, get the rectangle again, and do create form. This time we can make it so the form totally intersects the whole extent of the surface. You can see there I'm dragging the wrong face. One more time, let's click on this vertical one instead and drag this surface. Always try to have a clear intersection when you have Revit massing in play in Revit. So we have the cutting device. Let's now select it there and just hide it for a moment. I'm going to use it in just a second. Next step, we need to make a copy of this surface, because remember, we want to have two surfaces, one for all the open panels and one just for the closed panels. To do so, I need to get the original surface that generated this divided pattern. I can try to select it, but that's usually very tricky. So the safer way or easier way is this: select the divided pattern there and delete it. That's going to give me, of course, the original surface underneath. I can now click this, the surface, not the profile. Go to copy. If you get this, that means you didn't select the surface. You need to get the surface, not the component on it. So let's do one more time and do copy. Here we go. The copy command is going to work if you have selected the surface and also the components. So not just the surface, as I said before, I was wrong. You need to get them both. So I can now copy this and paste aligned to the same place. There we go. We can now hide the copied element and then reset the view. Now it's time for me to start cutting those surfaces. Let's select this big box there and then change it from a solid to a void. And as soon as I click away, you can see it had cut both of my surfaces. Anyway, that's a bit too much because we don't want it to cut both. It should only cut the surface that is meant for our solid panels on the top and at the bottom. So to uncut one of these two surfaces there, I can go to Cut and choose Uncut Geometry. Pick one of the two now, and then click on this invisible but highlighted form or void element. Here we go. Now we have this surface just for the top and the bottom, and also this other one for the whole facade. It's time now to redivide this one using the same parameters that we had before. So divide surface again, choose triangular flat as a pattern. Actually no, we need to go for this checkerboard one, not just triangle. So triangle checkerboard flat, and then make sure you set this to empty, this one to fixed distance of 500 starting from the beginning, and the same one for vgrid, except from the distance should be 300 instead. Apply that now, and you can see we're getting there. Of course, the orientation of the triangular panels we have now is wrong. If we look back to the reference photo, these triangle panels that are open, they go from a point on the top line and an edge on the lower line. In our case here, it's reversed. So we have the edge on the top line and the point of the triangle on the lower line. That's wrong. That's very easy to fix though. I can now select this again, the whole system, and use an old grid rotation of 180 degrees. And straight away, we have the right combination of parameters. Next step, let's take care of the solid panels. We can now select this top surface there. You have to press tab until you can select both the top and the lower bands. It's also important to make sure you can divide the surface. As you can see here, I have selected what I need, but on the ribbon, there's no divide surface. That means I didn't select the right object. Let's try again. It could be easier if I now hide this other surface that I have done dividing and focus on this other one. So make sure you get the surface. Here we go. You can see now that button is available again. I can now do divide. And this time, let's go for not a checkerboard, but a triangle flat. The reason is, if I go back to the photo now, you can see you have the solid panel both outside and inside the open panels. So that's done. Next step is to match the properties of this divided surface. So we can go for empty again, go for fixed distance of 500 from the beginning of the U grid, and also fixed distance of 300 from the beginning of the V grid. Let it run, and now we have that. We can now reset the view and see both systems playing very nicely together. You can see there we have those open panels slicing perfectly into our solid ones. Next step, let's make those panels actual open panels. We can now save this first. Let's call this one Mask 1. And now we can leave it here and go to make our panels. We can choose new family and go for this template here, curtain panel pattern based. As you can see, we have to get this grid here as well and change that to triangle checkerboard flat. The panel is a bit rotated, so let's get it now to the right orientation. This one there. I can now drop in here a middle point. So reference point on face and snap it to this midpoint there. Moving on, let's place a second point on top of this one. This time I'm gonna use still reference point, but instead of placing this new one on face, I want to draw it on a reference plane or work plane. Before placing it, I can now set the work plane to be this horizontal plane right there on this other point that I already placed. By default, this vertical plane's highlights, we can press tab now, and it's going to show the horizontal one. Click once to set the plane, and then click again to place my second point. Of course, there are identical points in the same place. That's fine. We are expecting this, so just do OK. Next step, I can select the second point that I placed and just use this arrow to move it up. As you can see, as I do so, the offset parameter in these properties changes. That's bigger and that is smaller. Let's make it maybe 200 for now. And also use this little button at the end of the line to assign a parameter to that. We can call this one overhang and do OK. The next thing to model will be our surfaces for this panel. This one has two, one surface on the left and one surface on the right. Let's make it happen. I can now select these 2 points, do a spline through point there. That give me this line. And I can repeat that process 2 more times to get this second line and then this third line. With all 3 of them selected, I can turn them now from model lines to reference lines by just ticking this box. Now, it's just a matter of selecting them. So I have these first 3, get them highlighted and do grade form. It will just be a metal sheet. So instead of going for a form with thickness, I can just go to get this surface graded. Do that one more time, but this time on this side. And now we have this panel ready. Anyway, don't forget about the frame because there's a frame there as well. So let's now drop in here a reference rectangle on a work plane that I can set to be this vertical one. Let's draw it firstly from the corner there. And maybe this can be 20 mil. And this other one can be 40. I can now move this so this middle point of the top line, make sure I snap to the middle point I have now. I can move it there to the point that I placed at the beginning. That's really thick, so let's go back to thin lines. We need to control this profile. This is the profile of the frame, by the way. That's why I made it a rectangle. Firstly, let's make sure that this point will always be where this top line will be. So lock it there. And then I can do 2 dimensions. One from here to the midpoint to the other line. And make sure that will be an equal dimension on both sides. Here we go. And then maybe another dimension there to get the overall width of the profile. Similarly, we can go from this point to this bottom horizontal line, and that will be the height of our frame profile. Select the 20 and call it where it should be. Frame width, and this one is going to be frame height. Alright, I can now select this line along with the other 2. So 3 selected, and then also include this profile there. Click on Create Form, and now we have our frame. It's a good idea now to test it out before we load it into the other model. So I can select this point there and just move it up. This one maybe move it down. This one up again. And everything is flexing as they should be. So let's now use this grid again and do reset points to grid. Let's now save this panel as panel open. You can go crazy with the name, but let's go for the minimal now. At least that's good enough for me. Okay, I can now load this into our massing family. And then maybe select this first system. Change the panel family now from just the default one there to panel open. Here we go. So open panels are ready. Actually, I forgot one thing. Let's go back to the panel family now. We need to assign some material parameters as well. So with the frame selected, I can go to here, click on this little arrow at the end again, and do create new parameter. Call this one frame. Repeat the same thing. I can do the same here for those panels. So these 2, set that to be a new parameter called panel. This is so I can control their materials separately in the project. So save this and then load this back. Now, of course, we didn't change anything in terms of geometry, but Revit will just go ahead and regenerate it anyway, this whole system. Okay, that is done now. Next step, we need to create a panel for our closed variation. So I can actually go back to here, go to new family again, choose the same template, curtain panel pattern based, and this time the pattern we want to base this panel on will be different. So get the grid there and make sure you choose not a checkerboard one, but a triangle flat one. With this one, it's actually much more simple because there's no opening mechanism. We can just select all of those 3 lines and do Create Form. Go for the sheet, not the solid. So second option there. And with this one, there's only one parameter we need to care about. That's going to be controlling the material. So go to here, click the last button there, and call this one also panel. Like that. And guess what? This panel is now done. I can now go to panel and save it to closed. So that variation there. We can now load this back to the mass family, mass 1 there. And now get this surface. We're going to do it at the same time for the top and the bottom. So I'll go to edit type now. Actually no, go to properties, go to the pattern list and choose panel closed. Now this one should generate much more quickly because there's a lot less geometry to create. And that is done. It's funny because here you actually don't notice anything much different from before. But trust me, if I didn't do this step, then when you load this family into your project, the surfaces we saw before, they were mass surfaces, so at some point they will disappear. We need to actually do what we did, which is converting these mass surfaces into actual closed panels. Anyway, looks like we have done the mass. Let's now test it. After saving, of course, always remember to save, especially when working on such a heavy mass. And now let's go to New and choose to create a new project. I happen to have no template on this machine, but if you do, then make sure you choose the one you need. Okay, now we're in the project environment. The next logical thing is to load the mass into here. So let's go to here now, the mass family, and use load into project number 1. Because this is a heavy object, it may take up to a few minutes to finish loading into your new RVT file. So be patient. As soon as it's loaded, you can then place it in your project environment. If you see this one here, show mass enable, that's fine. Let's do this. And then wait for a few more seconds for it to load. Okay, let's click now to place it. Alright, that's placed now. I can now zoom a bit out to see it. Right there. Go to 3D. And there you have it. Let's put it in more details. Here we go. Of course, the color will be gray for everything because we didn't change the materials. But now is the time to do it. So let's select one panel there. Go to Edit Type. And simply choose what we want. For the panel, I want to have it a bit more bright. So how about aluminium? This one there. Don't forget to change the shading color. This one is actually gray by default. So let's do white. And do OK. Here we go. Much brighter now. We can do the same for this closed panel as well. But for now, I'll keep it gray so we can see the difference easier. Of course, you have to also model other surrounding elements like the internal structure of the building, the floors, and so on. But once you have done that, you will get something very similar to this and to the reference photo. Alright, if you enjoyed this lesson and want more like this coming every single week, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Also, if you just want to have this Revit file to play with, I have added a link in the video description for you to download it. That way you will save time not having to create these panels from scratch yourself and just focus on designing the form of your building and then put those panels on top. So with that, I will leave you to discover more and see you soon in our next lesson.